Hello. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. My name's Matt. This is the Unstoppable Dad Project podcast, episode 1. I'm very excited to get this thing started. This is something that has been in the works for the last 6 months, and I'm really, really excited. I've said excited twice now to get this thing going, get this thing rolling. To be perfectly honest with you, I have really just been procrastinating over getting this thing going and starting for about 6 months now. It is something that I really should have put out into the world back towards the end of 2020, but here we are in February 2021, finally launching this thing. And, procrastination is something that everybody does. It is something that I do a lot. And I tend to do it because I overthink things. And the reason I overthought this was I'm like, do we need an intro? Do we need an outro? What music should we use? If we don't do that, it won't sound very professional. It might not sound great. There's a better than average chance that this might not sound great to how it will in the next 12 months, in the next 18 months, 2 years, 3 years. We will get better at this as we go through. And this is something that realistically all I needed to do was just get it started and get it rolling so that we can gain some momentum and we can start moving in the right direction, which is really what the podcast is about. It's about helping dads specifically gain some momentum and get themselves and their families moving in the right direction. And the main reason why I started this and the main reason why I started the Unstoppable Dad Project was because when I became a father, I've got a daughter who is 5.5 years old today. I've got a son who will be 2 years old in May. But when my daughter was born, as with most men, most fathers, when they have their first child, there was a whole bunch of emotions and a whole bunch of different things running around in my head. And I struggled to deal with those. I struggled to work through them, and that kind of manifested itself in a lot of ways, not so positive ways, in different aspects of my life. And due to my own ego, my own ignorance, and different things, I found it really hard to try and reach out and ask for advice and try and get advice from other people. And I felt it quite hard to find information, free information out there to try and help me through that period of life. That period where you first become a new dad, and the emotions and the thoughts that are running through your head around providing for your family, and even thoughts in the early stages where your kids are so reliant on their mother, thoughts of inadequacy and how do I, where do I fit in this whole thing, which goes away as they become older. Because once they start able to interact with you, it really your role in their life starts to get highlighted even more. But there's always these thoughts and emotions every time you bring a child into the world, and they're relying on you to provide food and shelter. They're relying on you to provide love and support to them, unconditional love and support, and that can raise its head as feelings of inadequacy and depression and all these other things that can start just from this one massive thing and this one massive change in your life. And it led me on a journey where I really had to find a completely different identity to what I had when I wasn't a father. And that's the thing, the longer I do this for, and the more new dads that I talk to, the more I realize that everyone goes through the same thing. And one of the important things for me when starting the Unstoppable Dad Project was trying to really get information out there and help dads. And through the process of really rolling this thing out over the last 18 months, we've gone from being a program that you pay to get into, through to different iterations of that, and through to where we are now, where I'm just going to do a podcast and we're going to chat about my experiences, my stories. We're going to chat to other dads, talk about their experiences, their stories. We're going to talk about life. We're going to talk about sports. We're probably going to talk about, I'm a little bit of a nerd, so we might talk about comic books and all these other things that, go into my life on a daily basis, which really constitutes me being a father, me being a role model, and me being the leader of or trying to be a leader of my family, and not only just being that, but trying to constantly evolve and change and move, keeping myself and my own identity, but understanding that how that fits into the family dynamic and how I can become the best version of myself, how I need to continue to be unstoppable when life throws shit at me. And that's where the Unstoppable Dad Project, why we talk about being unstoppable and why we're going to continue, because it doesn't matter what happens when you have people that are relying on you, and we all have people that are relying on us. I don't want to diminish the role that other people have when they don't have families, but when you have a little human being who is 100% reliant on you to provide food and shelter, and when you or you have multiple human beings that are relying on you to do that, that can be a fairly daunting task. And especially when you feel like you're in it alone and you feel like there is nowhere to turn for help, it can lead you down a very dark and lonely path. And some dads that go down that path are unable to come out of it. And that only not becomes a problem for them, but it becomes a problem for their family. And that can lead to broken homes. It can lead to, children who don't feel loved and don't feel supported. And this is why it's so important for dads to not only look after themselves physically and mentally, emotionally, but also try and have the mindset that they need to be unstoppable and they need to keep going and have the tools and have the things that they need to keep moving in that positive direction and keep moving things to a place where not only they're able to do the things for their family that they need to do to provide the life that they want to provide for them, but to look after themselves. And that's where it starts and stops. And we all spend so much time as fathers and as providers and as leaders worrying about everyone else and their needs that sometimes we neglect our own. But the point of this podcast really is to get some information out there that will hopefully help some people, sharing not only my stories but other people's stories. For me, I've been a coach for over the last 10 years. So not only have I had to deal with my own shit, but I've also been lucky enough to help hundreds of men over the last 10 years, hundreds of fathers over the last 10 years become more physically capable, to help them move in the direction that they want to, where they feel confident in themselves, they feel confident in their own abilities to not only be physically capable, but mentally capable to lead and provide for their family. And, this podcast is meant to be something that's going to give you some information around that, because it's very easy in today's day and age to get caught up in what we see in social media and everything like that. And everybody, when it comes to social media, we see a small clip and everybody's very willing on those clips to share their successes. What you're seeing on there is a highlight reel of what is going on in their life, because that's the medium. That's what it provides. It provides a short response. Whereas with the podcast platform, which we're using now, I love listening to podcasts. I have done I can't even remember when I started listening to it. And obviously that's fed into, and one of the reasons why we are doing this now. And I'm so excited to get this launched. But with podcasts, it's a longer format. We can go into a little bit more detail. And not only can we go into a little bit more detail, we can actually talk about the struggles that people are facing. We can talk about the lows that go with those highs that you see on social media, because when you're in a space and a headspace and you feel like you're really low, looking at some of those positives that are on there for some people can be feeding and can feed the motivation and help you. But for others, we want to hear that, people have been through similar struggles to us, and no two struggles are ever the same, because no two people are ever the same. But by using this longer format of podcasting, that we're able to not only talk about the stories and talk about the things that we have done to potentially overcome some hard times and some difficult times, we can share the downside and the upside, rather than just being on one end of the spectrum. And I think that's important. I think that's important from the point of view of, for everybody, not just for men, but for everybody that needs some information to get them out of a point where they are. Now, it's not all doom and gloom, and realistically, I don't want to do this to be a life coach. I just want to do this to try and get some information, share some experiences, and, maybe this will be a little bit therapeutic to me. The other reason I want to do this is I want to use this to sit down and talk to people who I admire, talk to people who I've been around, talk to friends, family, talk to coaches, mentors that I've had, so that they can give their own take and their own information on their experience with fatherhood or dealing with fathers and helping fathers. And by doing that and by giving all this information out that's easily accessible, you can listen to in your car, you can listen to at home when you're doing the gardening or the cooking or whatever it is that you need to do, then hopefully we can help some people and we can get people moving in the direction, and we can start to build this project, we can start to build this community, and we can start to get that information out there so that people that were potentially feeling like, I was feeling when I first become a father, don't feel so lost and lonely. And, they're maybe not at that point yet where they're ready to reach out to somebody for help. And sometimes listening to some stories, listening to some experiences, and listening to what that person has done to overcome that is helpful, and that's what I want to achieve. That's what we want to do with this. We want to encompass dads as a community and try and move us forward so we can be the best leaders we can be for ourselves, for our families, for our community, and push everything forward. So I'm really, really excited to get this started. I'm really excited to have this longer format available so that we can get the information out there, and not just the rose-colored information, the hard stuff as well too. And hopefully you can all see some value of it in it. Right now, we have the Unstoppable Dad Project out on a few platforms. Obviously, we have this podcast, which will be releasing a new podcast, hopefully weekly on a Wednesday. So every week on a Wednesday, we'll go through a topic, we'll go through an interview, and we'll release a new podcast on Wednesday. It's going to be varying lengths. This one's going to be a shorter one just because it's the first one, but each one's going to be different depending on the topic, depending on how deep we get, depending on the interview, depending on what we're talking about. It's going to change every week and hopefully keep dynamic, and hopefully we keep improving on what we are doing, and it's not the same thing over and over and over again. We want to keep moving forward. We want to be unstoppable. That's why we are called the Unstoppable Dad Project. But we have the podcast. Eventually we will get this thing up on YouTube as well as on all the places you can find your podcasts. But for now, for the first couple of weeks, it is just going to be audio only, and then we will let you know when it is up, when we are able to upload them on YouTube. On top of that, we have some socials. We have some Instagram, so at the Unstoppable Dad Project. We have Facebook, which is just the Unstoppable Dad Project, and attached to the Facebook group, we have a free group that you can add yourself to, which is full of other dads, full of a lot of helpful tips and things like that. So we have a couple of platforms which we are delivering information by. This is going to be number one. This is going to be our main source of getting information out there, and I'm excited to share my experiences with you. I'm excited to share the stories of other dads with you, and I'm excited just to build this community and get this thing going and get this thing moving in a direction where it helps a lot of people. We want to be able to help those people get to where they want to go in life. And, this is the first point. This is where we're going to start, and we'll constantly evolve, and we'll constantly move, and we'll constantly change. So we're at about 15 minutes. I want to thank those of you that have potentially suffered through until this point. You are awesome. Thank you for listening. Next week, we'll get back on here on Wednesday to go through some more stuff. If you've got any questions, or you've got anything that you would like me to talk about or cover off, jump on the Facebook page, jump on the Instagram page, and let's get some comments. If you like this, share it around, share it with your friends, make sure everybody knows, particularly dads. Yes, it is the Unstoppable Dad Project, and yes, the information and the stuff that we're going to be putting in here is going to be tailored towards fathers and obviously men. However, there may be some other people that find some benefit out of particular episodes or even the whole thing. So if that's you, awesome. But that is episode number 1 signing off. Thanks for listening. You're awesome. See you all next week. Goodbye.